like Kobe and Shaq. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And get into my fur. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Hustlers. The air horns are in the title.
Really?
Yeah.
Like quotation marks?
Yeah, so it's the title Hustlers, and then it's just whamp, 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 whamp.
How do you spell whamp?
BWAMPPPPP.
I really prefer pew 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 pew.
Pew, pew, pew. Anyway, hi everybody. Hi Shahir.
Hey Matt, how you feeling?
I'm good. I am pumped to talk about some hustles.
Some hustling? You been hustling this week?
I have been, no more or less than usual, and my hustling involves me sitting at my desk screaming at a computer and a cat wondering what the hell I'm doing.
It is unusual that you're oiled up and in a G-string, though.
Well, listen, I like to be thematic.
Yeah.
Just like last week, for Joker.
You had clown mask on.
No, I didn't have a clown mask on. I instead wore the most bland clothes possible that no one will be discussing in about 2 weeks.
So, like what you're wearing right now.
Yeah, G-strings. No, I'm kidding. Enjoy your film.
The conversation around Joker has been really fascinating. That episode, for unsurprisingly, was a popular one for us. We have a lot of emails in for Joker, but I think we're gonna maybe do that as a bonus episode because it will be fairly spoilerific to discuss, and we don't want to distract from Lorene Scafaриa's film Hustlers in this episode. So check us out for a special episode coming soon.
Yeah, it might even be before this. I don't know when we want to drop it. It could be mid next week. It could be whatever. But that'll be coming out. It'll be labeled bonus and it'll be labeled spoilers. So you can check out all of the Joker-esque discourse from our wonderful listeners out there.
Thank you very much for emailing us
Yeah,
in
appreciate
at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hitting us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod. I want to take a quick sidetrack here for a review that we got.
You yourself, listener at home, can leave us a review on iTunes.
That would be delightful if you did, as did Zach, who wrote, "Do you suffer from boredom?" I like where this is going.
Okay.
Already.
Wait.
Do you need to fill in those empty car rides with hours of entertainment? So far, accurate.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I do. I don't know where this is going, but I do need to fill in those
finish
car
reading
rides.
it.
I don't have a car, though. Then do yourself a favor and listen to this podcast. Oh, I see what you did there, Zach.
I like it.
Matt and Shahir have such great chemistry.
The first part I've disagreed with, but that's fine. No, I'm kidding.
I'm also I'm gonna Zach. I love this review, and I'm so happy you did it. Chemistry was spelled incorrectly. I'm sorry.
I'm
a monster.
You're a dick. You're putting a person who put a nice review of us on blast. You know what? No, Zach, spell it however you want, man. Like, this is coming from a person who cannot spell shit for me personally.
I'm a monster. I apologize. Okay, so Matt and Shahir have great chemistry, and their conversations either leave me in tears from laughter or deep in thought about the topic of movie. And don't try looking for another podcast about movies. There isn't one. But even if they are the only podcast about movies, they blow it out of the park. If you would like some good starting points, their 2001 A Space Odyssey and Once Upon a Time Hollywood episodes are easily my favorite. Thank you so much for doing what you do, and keep up the great work. And I take back what I said about chemistry because that was such a nice review.
Okay, well, there's a lot to unpack there from that. First of all, Zach, thank you very much for the rave review. Also, thank you so much for giving people a starting point. I think that's really nice. Like, and I kind of agree with the episodes you chose. That's actually a really, like, those are two strong, like, also not only like great conversations, but like kind of starting points about kind of sort of what we do.
Okay.
So I think that's great. Also, Shahir, world-class turd for calling out the spelling thing.
My wife is a chemist. For one.
What the fuck does that have to do with anything?
It's her profession. So
So spelling?
Spelling the word. Look, it's what I do. It's what I do.
You just asked me how to spell thwamp.
Yeah. Exactly. See, look, I'm on brand. I'm on brand.
Zach, you're amazing. Shahir's a butt. Let's move on. Thank you very much.
Just while we're on that topic, what is a favorite? We've got 236 episodes in the can right now. What's an episode for people listening in that you would point to just at the top of your hat, like that you think was fun and interesting?
Fun and interesting. I loved our all of our specialty episodes, like when we did Can Batman Be Black? When we did Desert Island movies.
Separating art from artists.
Separating art from artists. Those are all great. If you're looking for a specific film discussion, though, I think...
Is it going to be Spotlight? Is it
No, but You know what? I won't say this. I will say rather the episode I am interested in going back and hearing because I don't quite remember. Like I know my opinions, but I wonder what I said. Go listen to our Drive episode.
Oh,
That's old as shit.
Yeah.
And I'm probably real riled up about it because I am not a fan of the film Drive.
Okay.
What about you, Shahir? Do you have a?
You know what? I hate asking like that. I asked the question because now I'm like scanning, going, which one do I think is?
But you are in the studio where you can look above my head and see the banner and see if any of the images that we use for conventions and stuff. You can scan it, see if any of those episodes. So far, everyone, he didn't find one. He looked at all of our episodes we have posted around the studio.
No, you know
he's
what?
like, nah.
I'm gonna just go shout out one that like it's a movie that didn't not a lot of conversation is about, and we may very well be the only podcast to have talked about that movie. But Son of Saul, which is something we did like in our first year, and it was a movie that I really loved. I'm curious to go back and revisit what I would have said in that episode. But I remember seeing that movie, the first half of it on a plane, and going, I need to finish this, and we need to have a whole conversation.
Yeah,
about
no,
this.
I remember you talking about that.
So I think that exemplifies what I think the reason we do the podcast, which is that one of us will get excited about something where we've got to have this conversation, and it's not just about like did we think it was good or not. It's like we want to engage with the film.
That's why you do the podcast?
No, really.
I mean, I do it for the sweet paycheck.
Yeah, I do it for the paycheck. This is real. I got to tell you, it is getting hard to do the podcast.
Listen. Hey, everybody out there, if you want to make like sick bank real quick, start a podcast. Start a podcast, give it away for free, and you too can be rolling, much like Jennifer Lopez was in this movie, just in tons of money on the floor. That's what we do to get psyched for this episode, for all episodes.
We're metaphorical strippers on a pole. Is that kind of what you're saying? And people are throwing us, instead of money, they're throwing us sweet reviews.
I mean, yeah, like for instance.
But are we the starting point? Are we Destiny on the first day, or are we Ramona?
We're definitely not Ramona. I mean, you got to look at like Last Podcast on the Left, or like you want to go real high, even though I don't particularly listen to it, but like Joe Rogan or like any of that stuff. Like that's sort of the
Joe Rogan is Ramona.
I mean, again, I don't listen to the podcast, but he's one of the biggest podcasters. That's what I was sort of rolling towards. Yeah. If you want to go towards one that I really like, Last Podcast on the Left and the LPN Network is my favorite podcasting network. Their shows like Page 7 and Abe Lincoln's Top Hat are phenomenal if you're looking for more podcasts.
Okay.
Wizard and the Bruiser is so good. Check out Wizard and the Bruiser. They break down nerdy stuff real well.
Okay.
But yeah, we are definitely Destiny.
We're Destiny on the first day.
Yeah, when I say we're rolling around in money, we definitely like made the money ourselves. It's the money from Greasy Strangler. It's the money like written out on paper that we just made.
And we also have to like pay everybody else on the way out, like
we take
SoundCloud,
turns.
like our WordPress site,
our Squarespace site.
And there's just some and like the coffee person.
Yeah, like the coffee person. And to be fair, when we are rolling around, only one of us can roll around at once because the other one has to be the one throwing the money because we haven't trained Zoe to do it yet.
Do you remember in the Greasy Strangler when he kept the money in his butt? I haven't been telling you this. But that's what I've been doing.
Good,
the money's been in my butt the whole time.
Well, listen, I was super pumped to talk about Hustlers. Oftentimes for this podcast, we do have to see things right away, and then we have to get our stuff out there as early as possible because we want to be part of the conversation, much like Joker last week. The interesting thing that happens every once in a while is when enough stuff comes out or we can't do it or due to scheduling and whatnot, a very popular, well talked about film will come out and we won't get to see it for 2 or 3 weeks, and we're a little late on the discussion, I guess. But it gives me a really nice sort of different exercise in reviewing it, because when I watch it, I often find myself, if I've read a lot of things about a film before I see it, my view sort of skews to another direction, and I have to kind of like sort of, I guess pendulum back and forth to get to where I actually believe based on all of the stuff I've heard about it versus my own experience of it. But you don't get that when you do it right away because you don't hear as much about a film. Well, Joker you did, but like in normal situations, right?
Right.
So I was very pumped, not only because I was psyched to see this movie, but it also fell into that category of, it's been out for a couple weeks,
right?
And it's been been talked about in a lot of different ways. So I was psyched to sort of jump into it.
Okay, I guess For me, there was a couple of reasons I was really interested in it. What primarily, like, the idea about a movie about strippers who kind of fight back and hustle the hustlers, so to speak. The hustle against the Wall Street brokers that kind of broke America in 2007. I think that's kind of interesting. But honestly, it was the director attached to it that made me want to see this film, which is Lorene I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Lorene Scafaria. Which it was just a name that I was like, I really, really dug her first movie, Seeking a Friend at the End of the World, which, Matt,
that was so good.
So good.
That's in my Blu-ray case.
Yeah. I think I've seen it in your Blu-ray case. So I was curious if you what you thought about that
It's
movie.
great. That's a movie that I love intensely, but it's specific to a mood.
Okay, to a mood
that I am in, right? Like, I can't just, like, if I'm like, oh, I want to watch a movie, I won't just pop that one in. But, like, man, hit that right moment, and it's a near perfect film for me. I really like that movie.
Yeah, and it was a 2012 film with Steve Carell and Keira Knightley. Basically, the end of the world is coming, and Keira Knightley needs to get across the country or something like that. And Steve Carell has a plane, and basically these two people who have nothing else going on in their lives, and the world is ending, have to come together in order to help each other out.
Yeah,
it's really terrific. It has one of the best needle drops at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
A track from the Hollies, All I Need Is the Air That I Breathe. So I remember I went and saw that in the theater, really loved it. So it was just like, and there's something about a movie with strippers that I was just like,
that you just gravitate towards?
I just gravitated towards, but I also was like, the fact that this was being written and directed by a woman was the big draw card for me.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I want to see a woman's take on this story, because I the thing I don't want to see at this point is I don't want to see another man's take on this story.
Yeah.
And I was starting to think about. So this is a sort of an interesting thing, which was that one of my professors at Victoria University, Professor Russell Campbell, wrote a book on sex workers in film. And his entire thesis was about the way in which sex workers are represented in film, the way in which essentially their representation is in line with male patriarchy. Like sex workers essentially represent male anxiety in films, his book is very specific to that topic. It's very specific to prostitution, not specifically to strippers. But this is obviously in the milieu of sex work.
Yeah.
And I started thinking a little bit about strippers on film. And the way we sort of talk about strippers, like who are sex work adjacent. I mean, they are sex workers, but not maybe in the sort of sense that we think about prostitution or anything like that.
They're sex workers. They're not prostitutes. I actually don't know the way to sort of classify, if they would classify themselves as that
sex
way.
workers. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure either. And perhaps like if we misspeak about,
write us in onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. We are in no means experts in this topic.
Yeah, and trust me, okay. So let's get personal here for a second.
Sure.
Been to a strip club?
Yes.
Yeah. Often?
Not often.
Yeah.
You know what though? I was ruined for strip clubs.
Okay.
Let's talk about a fun story.
All right, let's talk strip clubs.
So I was at a bachelor party.
It's usually where strip clubs start.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In Montreal.
Okay.
Love Montreal. Shout out to anyone listening in Montreal.
Yeah.
And we were in a small hotel, and there was a small strip club right next door.
Yeah.
And we were there for 4 nights.
Right.
And I'm not a huge fan of strip clubs. I feel like I don't know. I don't know if I'm too uptight for them, or I don't like. I like to know the rules of a place or a game or whatever you're talking about, like, before you start. And strip clubs have often felt to me like I don't know the full set of rules, and now I'm just trying to guess along the way.
Right.
But I was with a bunch of good friends, and we went in, and it was a fine time. I bought the groom-to-be lap dances, and someone bought me one, and it was nice. And like, it was the first time ever, and I wish I remember the name of the strip club. I could give it a shout out. That it felt like just sort of like cool and nice, if that sort of makes sense.
Okay.
There was no the girls or the staff were not pressuring. If you wanted something, you could buy it. If you didn't, then they didn't give a shit. And so throughout this entire thing, like that first night happened, I was like, oh, that was pleasant.
Yeah.
We go about our stuff, right?
Yeah.
And every night afterward, we would come back and end our night at the strip club.
Oh, so
At the
how many
same
nights
strip
did
club.
you go?
We were in Montreal for 4 nights.
So you went 4
in 4 nights in a row, we ended our night at this specific small strip club.
Okay.
And by the 3rd and 4th night, we were just And we weren't like spending a ton. I want to be very clear about this. Like, we weren't just like high rollers because we didn't have a ton of money.
Right.
But like the staff and the strippers and whatever like just seemed to like us, I guess. Like, and they would like come hang out with us between when they were working.
Okay.
It was weird.
Okay.
And it was like, at first I'm like, well, they're trying to get more. They must be trying to, I mean, this is part of the hustle.
Yeah.
But like, we never paid them any more for anything. I don't know. It was very weird, but it became like almost like friends at a club.
Okay.
Or like when you know the bartender. It was weird.
Right.
And maybe that was all by design. And if it is, kudos.
Yeah.
But by the end of it, on night 4, we were leaving and we're like, oh, we have to go say goodbye to all these people that we know now.
Right.
So we did and whatever. And then I remember Crystal, which is not her real name, I'm sure, but Crystal with a K, very clear, was like, we're going to do, there's an after party at like such and such. You guys should come. And I was like,
yeah.
you know, whatever. And like they sent us the Google map, and when they texted, it was hilarious. And
Do
like,
you think you were being primed?
maybe, because here's the deal.
Yeah.
Check this out. This is what the text message said.
Okay.
It said, hey, here's the address. No booze, but all the drugs and Red Bull you could want.
Okay.
And I was like, it was like literally like an hour away. And I'm like, I'm not going to this thing. And none of us did.
Right.
But like, we could have 100% been primed.
Okay.
But it still was, it's an experience that I look back on fondly, but like not in like a this is super sexy sort of way. In a like, I don't know. It felt like, if it was an act, it was the best act. And if it wasn't an act, it was a nice, genuine thing where we kind of made friends with some people. I don't know. But that's my favorite strip club story. I have some horror stories that are not as fun.
Yeah.
But like, it's all about, honestly, for me and a strip club, it's all about the vibe of the place. And I have yet to find another place that I've enjoyed. And I don't go often.
Yeah.
But oftentimes I find when I do, I'm just like, this feels like everyone, including the people I'm with, is just sort of like really pushing for everything. And I'm just like, ugh.
Okay.
What about you? That was a long-winded story. I apologize.
I've been to 2 strip clubs in my life, not by, because of the group we're in, mostly in college. They're college and one later in life.
Yeah.
The first one was kind of an adventure. It was in Tijuana, and and it was like this strip club that was in like a parking lot. That was like you had to like ask 3 people, and then when it was like that thing where like you knocked on the door, and then like this little slit opened up, and then like this set of eyes peered in, and like
sounds like a Borderlands quest.
It was a little bit. It was like we thought we were gonna get killed at some point. And then we went into the strip club. And to be honest with you, the adventure of going to the strip club was more memorable than the strip club itself.
Sure.
I remember it was definitely a strip club that we were not supposed to be in. Like, as in, it was a strip club that was sort of hidden away for very high rollers, I think.
Really?
But somehow we had managed to get ourselves in there. And then one in Wellington City, and I remember again the reason was there was a sailor who had stopped in port and like met up and like bumped into our group while we were
random sailor.
A random sailor, and the random sailor said to us,
Yar.
"Could you please show me where the strip clubs are, so that I go?" And in Wellington, New Zealand, at the time, there was like 2 strip clubs in total. And so we took him there, and then he was like, "I don't want to go in by myself. Here, I'll pay for you guys to get in if you come in with me." And so we went in.
This is weird. This is weird.
Those are my 2 strip club stories, and I'll be honest with you. And so again, my memory is more of the situation that got me to the strip club more than the strip club itself. My memory of the strip clubs themselves is I'm not built for whatever that interaction is. I'm very uncomfortable. I find there's something when I know someone is wanting to interact with me only on the basis that I will pay them. I'm not. I sort of shut down.
So you don't go to therapy?
No, I don't go to therapy. Yeah. And so and it's, it's nothing to do with the people. I'm sure they're very nice people and stuff. And it's just that I don't.
It's that specific transaction you are not comfortable with.
I don't. I think maybe the better way to put it's like you, which is like I don't know what the rules of this are, and I don't want to break any boundaries.
The interesting thing is, it's all about. It sounds nefarious, and I don't think it often is. But the rules part, the reason why I find it so tricky is if you're playing the game optimally, no one should feel or realize there are rules.
Right.
But there are, and you need to know them. So I'm always ticking back and forth between those two things, and therefore I can never get in that vibe of like just enjoying myself.
Yeah, I'm not much of a drinker either, as you're well aware. So I don't lose my inhibitions kind of to be in that scenario. So that's me though. I mean, like that's a very me reaction to those.
I find the more I drink, the more I think about it too much.
Okay. But so like that environment is something that I think is infinitely fascinating for films. But unfortunately, when I thought about the films that have actually dealt with this topic, they're not particularly either serious or, except for one, maybe two. They tend to be from the male gaze.
Yes.
So the films I thought about obviously was Demi Moore's film Striptease.
Yep.
Again, the selling point there is seeing a star that we know and identify with. Demi Moore, of course, had blown up at this point because of films like Ghost, and then seeing them strip. And I think like that's the selling point of the movie. It's like, oh my God, like look how far she's willing to go for this film, or look how much we're going to see in this film. Showgirls, the Elizabeth Berkley vehicle, the Paul Verhoeven movie, From Dusk Till Dawn, which had Selma Hayek stripping. Think about the way those films are sold to us. Sin City with these are both Robert Rodriguez films.
Yeah.
With Jessica Alba.
Man, From Dusk Till Dawn. It's funny because it has to do with obviously Salma Hayek, but also just like the vampire bordello in general.
Yeah.
Like I know there's like 45 minutes of George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino like doing stuff before they get there. I don't remember any of it. Like
really?
It all takes place like for me, like it's like, oh, they show up and Tom Savini's there with a crotch gun. I'm like, this is cool.
And Cheech is outside selling.
Yeah, I gotta rewatch From Dusk Till Dawn.
I love that switch from Dusk Till Dawn. Regardless, so there's that sense of like it is from the male point of view, and it very rarely does it kind of go into the sort of fuller life of these people. The one film that I think does this is maybe Exotica, although it's been a long time since I've seen that.
I have not seen Exotica.
With Adam, it's an Adam McGuyan film, and it has one of my favorite actors of all time, Elias Koteas, who I have always wanted to write a movie specifically for him.
Was he Casey Jones in the Ninja Turtles movie?
He was, yeah, and that's kind of where I saw him for the first time, and I was like, and that was
great.
He was my favorite character in that Ninja Turtles movie, and then he went on to Look Who's Talking, and so like every movie, I would watch movies just for him.
I love him. I love when he goes into the Foot Clan, and like the only thing keeping them together is like the teenage Foot Clan is like a skate ramp and like both menthol and unfiltered cigarettes. Given by Sam Rockwell. And like he comes in, he's like, what are you doing? Like, this is ridiculous. And like he's cool enough in that like late 80s, early 90s sort of way where like, yeah, fuck these ninjas. And they all like sort of leave. And then, oh God, the end of Ninja Turtles 1, when Shredder, spoiler alert for this, when Shredder falls into the trash compactor truck, and Casey straight up fucking flatlines him. He's whoops, and he hits the button and crushes Shredder.
Yeah, he murders him.
In a fucking garbage truck.
It's good.
I love Casey Jones. I love that actor.
Yeah, Elias Koteas. And the thing that was interesting with him is that I grew up watching him, and I felt like I grew at the same time as he was in terms of the movies I was watching. So he would pop up in things like Look Who's Talking 2, so like I was getting interested in comedies. And then he popped up in The Thin Red Line, and he gave this like probably one of the most haunting performances I think I've ever seen from an actor. And then I watched Exotica as I got older. He was in Zodiac and The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. So he was just this actor that like I knew from this very specific point in my life, and then kind of watched as I got interested in film. And again, I don't know if anyone knows who Elias Koteas, but in fact, I have a script where the lead character I've written is really based on him. Like I would love to cast him in a movie.
You're friends with Will Smith now. I'm sure he has his number.
We've gotten so far away from the thing I want to talk about, which is strippers. But regardless, there's a great film, Adam McGuyan film, called Exotica, where he plays. I believe he visits strip clubs and he meets a woman and they kind of have an interesting relationship. Needless, and then the other one I thought about was Closer with Natalie Portman. Natalie Portman, Clive Owen. Again, it was the selling point, or it seems like the selling point there is how much could they. It would be amazing to see this like Oscar nominated, like mainstream female star strip in a film.
I don't even think I'm familiar with that one.
I think it's a Mike Leigh film. No, not Mike Leigh. I've gone blank on the director's name. Mike. Mike Nichols.
Mike Nichols.
Yeah,
I think he likes
the graduate guy. So that's been my perception of how stripper movies or movies about strippers comes about. So again, the fact that Lorene Scafaria was going to be making this film,
yes,
was a big draw card. Matt, could you tell us what the film is about?
Oh, it's like I'm back in Montreal.
Well, I'm just doing the Adam McGuyan because he's Canadian.
I understand. Inspired by the viral New York Magazine article, Hustlers follows a crew of savvy former strip club employees who band together to turn the tables on their Wall Street clients. Accurate?
100% accurate. I went and read the article by Jessica Pressler last night as well. It's a great article. It was on The Cut, and it really does talk about this kind of entire moment. Like the point of the story is it's a moment between the 2008 financial crisis and the repercussions of it. And I think that idea has permeated through film, very profoundly. And the film that the two films I think about in that respect is Killing Them Softly, the Andrew Dominik film with Brad Pitt, and The Girlfriend Experience, the Steven Soderbergh movie.
Oh yeah.
So it's an idea that the idea that the 2008 financial crisis, it can be examined from almost any point of view. Like we could get a film about janitors and how they were affected by the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah.
We could get a film about coffee shop workers.
Mm-hmm.
We get a film, because basically all of a sudden people stop spending money. It's like macroeconomics in action kind of
and
thing.
how how it affects literally everybody.
But this was an interesting article that I found, interesting point that I found in the Jessica Pressler article, which she was played by Julia Stiles in the film.
Mm-hmm.
And she's referring to strip clubs here, but the industry was enjoying a cultural moment. Improbably, the values of third-wave feminism had aligned with those of Howard Stern, ushering in an era in which taking off one's clothes in front of an audience was no longer degrading, but sexually liberating and financially empowering. New York City clubs like Scores, the club in the film, with their bright lights and bottle service, had successfully marketed themselves as naughty but harmless nights out for men and women. And celebrities and athletes were all too happy to be photographed with dancers who looked as wholesome as topless cheerleaders. And I don't know if we're back in that. I don't think we are back in that period now. But there is a shift. For example, when you think about pole dancing athletics, there's
that side of
an
it,
acknowledgement that it is actually like physical labor.
So I was shocked, and I hadn't really thought about it before. But like the way this film even sets it up and what they're referencing in the article about like how. Because before the financial crisis, like money was for many people very prevalent and sort of easy to come by in certain circles.
It was abundant, yeah.
It actually made I'm sure there's a couple different socioeconomic things you could break down, but like just taking the sort of microcosm of strip clubs, both the strippers themselves, the workers, and the clientele, it then became more of a safe space almost, because and by that I mean, like, at least how it sort of says it in the film, or how it portrays it from before and after, because there was so much abundance in wealth and so much abundance in clientele, the workers at the club didn't have to, like, there's always another person willing to pay for a thing, right? So therefore you don't have to start selling things you are not comfortable with,
right?
And sort of the way, like, that sort of built this sort of backwards net of, like, again, sort of speaking to what it says in the article, like, it feels like, topless cheerleaders or something, even almost like an innocent Disney-esque thing, but also that's a they bit naughty.
It's
right?
one step away from Hooters, right? Like
Hooters,
yeah. It was, whereas strip clubs used to be like far removed from Hooters, but they seem to be in alignment.
But then just like everything that happens when a resource is scarce, what businesses have to do, what individuals have to do to get that resource, to get money to do whatever, can lead to more unsafe work conditions for the people that work there, and just other sort of bad things, and even just the vibe shifting to a more negative place. Right. Now, I'm not saying that all strip clubs now are like super negative spots. I think there's a weird sort of conjoinment of how it sort of swung back, though I haven't really been to one in a couple years, so I can't speak from personal experience. But like the zeitgeist, right? I think. You know what I love, and I've always really appreciated this. I think it's on 46th Street in Manhattan. When you're walking between like 8th and 9th Ave. I could be wrong on the no, it's 54th.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's a dance school, and then right next to it is a strip club.
Yeah,
and whenever I walked by it, I was like, Yeah, I mean, not in like a haha sort of way. Like, no, that makes total sense. Like, this is fucking hard.
Right.
Like, not that all the dance that they're doing in there is pole or is sort of exotic dancing, but I don't know. It's just it is definitely like the athleticism. I think is now appreciated a lot more, at least openly.
Well, I think in this comment about third wave feminism as well as this idea that no one, like first wave feminism was about essentially not having to fulfill the male fantasy at
Okay.
all, like entirely not having to do that. But third wave feminism was more about like we can enjoy and indulge in what might be considered male fantasy or in fantasy without feeling guilt or shame for it.
I see.
And I think that was a sort of an interesting point that walks a sort of finer line between exploitation and self empowerment. But I think it's a fascinating line.
Yeah.
Like, where is that line?
Hey, listen, everybody, if you want to hear two men in their late 30s talk about feminism, you've come to the right place.
Yeah, exactly. We
are
ideally suited to have.
Oh
this
my gosh, yes.
So I think like the environment is ripe for conversation. The particular economic environment around it, basically the way in which strip clubs operate in terms of transactions, entirely makes sense.
And the story it's based off of is sort of salacious enough in that sort of based on a true story sense, where you're like, holy shit.
Yeah. So Matt, what was your first impressions of this? And before we get into that, just notwithstanding the fact that this is an amazing cast, all spearheaded by maybe the triumphant Oscar return of one of our sort of cultural icons of the last 20 years, and that is Jennifer Lopez, who never really went away.
No,
but
Jennifer Lopez just went and did whatever Jennifer Lopez wanted to do.
Yeah, but like hasn't done headlined a movie like this in some time.
I mean, straight up, I dug the hell out of it. I was hearing great things about it, and oftentimes when I hear great things about a movie, I'm like, well, it can't be that good. And it for the most part, matched up the entirety of those expectations. It's shot super well. I enjoy the edit of it. The look of it's great, and it definitely does a good job at both making the individual worlds of the women, both when they're working and when they're not working, disparate enough where like visually it makes sort of sense, but also based on like the type of shots and color palettes and etc. Like it still feels like a cohesive movie. Sometimes it's a little too jarring when you sort of deal with two worlds in a thing. The main four girls are phenomenal.
Right.
Actually, I can't think of anybody in this entire thing. No, Julia Stiles is great too. I don't know. Like this, I have zero criticism on any of the acting whatsoever. I think the story is an awesome sort of like. It kept me interested the entire time.
Right.
And it was great to see a group of women in this case basically doing what I would like. I kept thinking back honestly to Goodfellas a lot in this.
There's the DNA of Goodfellas is certainly woven through this,
Yeah.
for a couple of reasons.
Yeah, and I think weirdly, I think this movie does some things better than Goodfellas, and I think Goodfellas does some things better than this movie. But I to see it from this perspective in this time period, talking about these social issues, was just such a delight and something like I hadn't seen before, nor had I thought much about previously. And not to mention, I mean, obviously the performance of Jennifer Lopez in that, like in the first 20 minutes, her first dance, like that. You sent me a great article. Who is that by?
Constant Grady has an article for Vox about Jennifer Lopez's body and the way in which her body has been represented in media and the way in which she uses her body. And this is a film I think that kind of exemplifies the fascination that we as an audience have with her physical body.
And something she said in that article, go check that out if you can. The way that this scene is shot when she comes out, when Jennifer Lopez's character comes out and does this dance. You haven't seen her before, but you've already been set up with the world through Constance Wu, bringing you through Destiny. When Ramona comes out and does her thing, it's definitely like, oh, here's the head. This is the best person at this. But the way it's shot is not like most of the other movies. You'd never see a man's close-up face of like looking at her, so you never get that sort of feeling of objectification.
Yeah.
You get basically Constance Wu looking at her in this like shock and awe of admiration and like wonderment.
Yeah.
And you see sort of Jennifer Lopez when she's doing all of this stuff, and yeah, she's doing sexy moves and doing impressive strength requiring sort of pole stunts, but like the entire thing is based on her performance and in the enjoyment of that performance. And the only onlooker that we actually focus on is another woman not looking on in sort of a lustful, like, sort of way, but in a holy fuck, this person's good sort of way.
Right.
And that after that scene played, that movie just had me. Like,
Right.
I was on board.
Right.
And it didn't really disappoint me at all. I have one incredibly small criticism we'll get to when we get into spoilers, but it was great. Well, I mean, that was sort of my initial stuff. What about you? What did you think?
I think you touched upon the real things I liked about it. Now, the fact that you mentioned Goodfellas is kind of interesting, because Lorene Scafaria. God, I hope I say that last name right. And if I don't, I apologize. Like
just correct her spelling.
Yeah, exactly. Correct my pronunciation if I correct your spelling. Zach,
come at
Zach.
Shahir.
Yeah,
figure out everything he says wrong in this episode and email us back, and I will read it nice and slow.
Do it. I really love that this felt like it was from a woman's point of view, like, and you could see it from the very first shot, which is this, she manages to weave in these like really long takes, that take you through the club, but from the point of view of one character, where you recognize how silly this all is, like in terms of the way women's bodies are like basically put on display, and it can just it inflames a man to like the highest levels, and she's literally just walking through. It's a really fascinating play. And I think the scene that you're talking about when we get introduced to Ramona for the first time, the fact that we see it from Destiny's point of view rather than else, what the film is constantly reminding you of there is the men are rubes in this. The men are there to be exploited, whereas the women are there to admire each other. And I think the thing about this movie that really works for me is that it's an enduring story about female friendship, and it's a story about women supporting each other. Now, the places these women go to and the limits of what they are willing to do in order to exploit other people is certainly beyond the pale in terms of what is acceptable.
Full-fledged morality.
Yeah, full-fledged morality. But I don't think the movie shies away from the fact that what they're doing is wrong. What I think is interesting is that the film binds them together with the singular sense of like, these are women who are trying to navigate an essentially corrupt system.
Yes.
And figuring out what is the best, what are the tools and assets that they have in order to navigate the system. And so what I love about that is that you don't ever get a sense, when a woman gets naked in this film, or when someone starts dancing, it never feels like they're being exploited for the male gaze in the audience. Like, my favorite thing is the final shot of this film is them dancing to a Janet Jackson track, and it's all of them fully clothed, and you feel it's a wide shot, and what you feel is that these are women who are just enjoying themselves, enjoying being around each other, and it's about the relationships that they have formed with each other. Lorene Scafaria took this as a writing assignment originally, and had to fight in order to get this to become the director for this film. it took a long process for her to be attached to it as a director. And Scorsese was in the running to direct this at one point. Will Ferrell and Adam McKay, who had done The Big Short at this point, and Vice, who kind of has that interest in economics, the sort of nexus point between economics and social life.
They also were attached at one point?
Well, no, they're producers on this, so they commissioned the initial script.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and McKay...
Well, they seem to have come a long way from Margot Robbie in a bathtub.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, maybe there's a recognition there that from what Lorene Scafaria talks about, she says that McKay kind of understood that it would be a great situation for her to direct the film.
Yeah. Good.
I don't think he was ever in the running to direct it, although it was a property that I'm not sure which company had optioned from the article, but he kind of spearheaded it in some way. Again, he said that he was the one telling her that Scorsese was in the mix to direct it,
right.
and I think the way she describes it is, at one point she said to him, "I hope Scorsese doesn't do it so that you can." And but she was very, there's an interview with her in Bill Simmons' podcast where she talks about, she was just sort of she was like, if Martin Scorsese directs this, that would be amazing. I would be happy to be on set to watch Martin Scorsese work. But eventually it became apparent that she, it apparently took like 9 months for her to be attached to this as a director. And I think it is the thing that makes this film work.
Of course, it's a good thing that Marty was busy on Irishman.
Irishman, I think at this point he might have been busy on Wolf of Wall Street as well, and Silence. So he had a lot of projects going on. There are elements of this film that occasionally feel like they are riffing on Scorsese, particularly Goodfellas, Casino. That sort of modern second act of Scorsese's career, where he kind of got into that sort of flashy, Las Vegas style kind of, sweeping camera moves kind of thing,
showing the excess in a very exciting way that makes the audience excited. Also, I mean, again, you can see the long shots as a very inspired thing.
Yeah, but they never, because they're kind of framed in this this very purposeful sense of looking. Like who's looking at who and who has the right to look at who in this film, and found it, and really, because there are other filmmakers, like Ted Demme's film Blow, for example, with Johnny Depp, feels like very much like a Scorsese movie, like someone really watched a bunch of Scorsese movies and was like, let's make this movie like Scorsese did. This feels like it's riffing on that idea because it's relevant to what the story is about, but it's only using that idea kind of just as a touch point, and it has its own identity in terms of what it is trying to say and do.
It's very interesting, and I'm going to bring this back to you, but you did it. Now it's going to be the point so nice, I'm going to make it twice. Joker has Scorsese stuff too.
Scorsese
but
influence,
here's the interesting part. I think Hustlers, and I'm going to say this, and I might have to backtrack because I'm not exactly sure exactly where I'm going with it. Hustlers takes Scorsese-esque elements and uses them to tell a new story from an interesting, different perspective.
And I think fundamentally the difference here...
And hang
on.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we might be about to say the same thing, is that this has something to say.
Yes. Well, not only that, but no, maybe that can actually be boiled down. That was kind of where I was going to get to, much more long-winded. Yes, Joker takes aesthetics and structure, but at the end of it, doesn't really go anywhere with a message of anything really.
We'll go to that bonus episode.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just interesting, and I'll bring up something else about that later. But yeah, it's just, I like that we're doing both of these back to back.
Yeah, we're doing two. Scorsese is now, I've certainly been on set, and when I've done a camera move, for example, I've said, this one, I want this to feel like a sweep from Goodfellas. I want this to feel like a push in from Goodfellas.
Yeah, because it's cultural shorthand.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. And it makes total sense. But I think what works in this film. I think the story is somewhat. It can feel somewhat slight, as in, we don't exactly know what's happening. There's a flash forward and flash back between the article being written and the story being retold. But the thing that couches it really, it comes from that very first line for me, which is "Get in my fur," and it's these two women who, when you're watching it, you're sort of waiting for this turn to happen where we realize that Ramona is somewhat more nefarious than we first perhaps thought.
Yeah.
But that never happens, and I'm so glad it doesn't, because what the film is ultimately kind of trying to identify is that these two women were out to support each other in an almost non-competitive way.
Sure.
And there's an interesting side story about Lorene Scafaria, who she's part of this sort of troupe of screenwriters. They call themselves the Army? No, hang on. Where have I got this? I've got this written down.
You got it. I believe in you.
The Fempire, which she writes with Diablo Cody and Dana Fox. And she talks about how they sit and they write together, and they're completely supportive of each other. They're not competing. They cheer each other on as much as possible. Whenever one has a success, they're sort of all there for it. So I think that point of view is really what makes this film work, even when the story gets a little confusing, even when it kind of gets a little slight. None of that matters. There's a couple other things. First off, the cast in this thing, like you seem to have like the biggest names in music in this film. You've got J-Lo herself, Cardi B is in this, Lizzo pops up,
Yep.
G-Eazy is in this, and none of it ever feels.
Spoiler alert, but Usher makes a cameo.
Usher makes a cameo. And one of the things she talks about in that interview is that, like all these, basically once J-Lo signed on to do this movie, everyone circled around her and was like, yes, we will do. Of
course they did.
Because, like I can imagine as an actress or even a star, like should I do a movie where I'm a stripper, like when I have to perform and, like how much of my body is going to be exploited in this film. Once it was J-Lo, once I believe it was Lorene Scafaria, I think everyone kind of, coalesced around this film is like, no, this while the subject matter might be salacious, while the topic might be, like the kind of thing that we've seen previously in an exploitative way, this is not going to be that.
But it's also thematic to what the movie is about, which is really great too. Like, again, I don't think that a lot of the previous films you listed in this, I don't want to even call it a genre, but like movies about strippers or with strip clubs or like whatever, it's not. This movie calls out exactly what the salation is and how the people sort of work around it, and the other ones might mention it, but the movies are not about that.
Except maybe the girlfriend experience. I have a very strong place in my heart for the
interesting.
for the
Okay, let's put that one aside. I'm saying the majority of them. This is not something that normally gets put across like that, so it's very nice. I will say about the structure. Are we into spoilers, I guess, at this point?
Yeah, why not? Let's do this.
So, and I don't think I'll hit anything too much, but it might lead down that road. The structure of this film, it's interesting because, okay, I don't think entirely that if I really want to like break it down like hyper critically from a editing and sort of pacing perspective, the way that it introduces this like kind of future jump to the past storytelling jump to the past and then sort of kind of forgets about that thing a little bit 2/3 through and then like we're sort of in regular time, that is not a fully effective structure for me. But here's something else. I'm going to keep tying this back to Joker and saying everything that Hustlers did correct that Joker did not. Hustlers, I think it is a slight misstep in the structure, but the difference is that Hustlers has so much to say and is overall like not just one or two things are enjoyable about it, but like literally everything is enjoyable about it and feels rich in a way that I don't care that it had a slight pacing misstep on something that from a technical level might bug me otherwise. Everything else let the experience sort of flow over me, whereas some of the stuff in Joker, I won't get into spoilers for that because I don't want to do that, but there are moments in it where it switches gears very quickly and you are told a thing in my opinion, that was not set up or earned once or twice. And it got me to a point where I was like, oh, we're doing this now? Okay. And it kind of broke the immersion for me in that format because there wasn't enough, I guess, cinematic lubricant to sort of get over the. Yeah, you like that? I figured you'd like that. You were talking about greased up G-strings before. Let's do this.
There's something wrong about the way you use it.
Okay.
Like people expect this of me. I'm not sure we're expecting it of you.
Anyway, no. So while I think there's the pacing of it and that sort of editing tactic for this film I don't think is used to its full potential. It didn't also ever I had to when I watched it, I was like, I love this. What am I going to talk about? Right. And then I was like, I had to kind of go back and be like, okay, well, these are all the great things. And I guess if I have to talk about it, that's one thing I could see where if the rest of this movie wasn't entirely sort of like a washing over of an experience, that could be a small thorn.
I guess the only point I want to make there is I'm glad that it's not full on Scorsese. It's not. It's really. Same. Uses it as a touch point. It has its own identity. I think every scene is rich and interesting. I have one point of confusion, but it doesn't break the movie experience for me. It has to do with the flashback structure when we're seeing Destiny talking to the reporter, and she seems to be fully, has all this sort of jewelry on, and she seems to be living in the suburbs now. And I didn't understand what her situation had become.
Yeah.
Because at the end of it, there's a phone call that she has with that character again, where she says, "I'm moving into, someone has been helping me out, and I'm moving into another, I'm moving into pharmaceutical sales or something like that." And I was just confused at what had happened to her when she was talking to the reporter.
That's kind of my point. It kind of just breaks down a little bit, and they realize that that's not the important thing about the movie, so they just were like, "Okay, no, let's just keep moving."
Well, it was because what the expectation that was being set up there is that Ramona had gone to prison while Destiny had kind of thrived and found some other other
But
way.
we never actually see that.
Yeah, we don't see it, and we're not sure. And it never breaks the experience for me. And I think the last scene with Jennifer Lopez's character, where she talks about the things that she carries in her purse, to have with her at all times, and she's got this photo of Destiny as a child, I think is just so lovely. It's such a beautiful moment. And like there are so many moments in this film where you're just seeing these two, because again, the way, like the title is Hustlers, we're expecting Ramona to kind of turn on Destiny at some point, but she never does. And in fact, all the way through, she just continually supports her. And I think that
she never actively turns on her.
Yeah.
But she does make reckless decisions that are correct for her character that the film has set up that does put Destiny and the girls and their operation in danger.
Of course, but she doesn't actively go out of her way to harm Destiny.
So then there's the difference, and I go back to this, this is sort of as a philosophical question in general, but like, what's worse, causing someone harm because you're like, I'm going to cause them harm, and this is what I'm doing, like actively knowing what you are doing, or being so ignorant of what that other person needs or what is safe for that person that you just roll on through anyway in a selfish tirade, which is kind of what Ramona does. It's sort of like she wants more, and she's sort of in this thing. So like, she doesn't actively be like, I'm gonna turn on Destiny, but she also, again, everything is true to her character and it's done very well, but she does come from a selfish place that then eventually does hurt Destiny.
Well, if you look at the actions of everyone in this film,
everyone kind of does it.
Yeah, everyone's compromised in some way. No one is morally pure.
Oh no, I know. I'm just saying that it's a different a different kind of injuring somebody.
Think about one of my favorite scenes in this film is there's a sequence in which one of their what do they call them, Joes, Jacks, what do you call your Johns? One of their Johns is like has collapsed because he tried to jump into a pool or something like that.
He jumped off the roof and missed the pool.
Yeah, and so they have to drag him to the hospital.
Yeah,
and then she and it's a sequence that again reminiscent of the helicopter chase sequence from Goodfellas, where she takes someone to she has to like negotiate the act of taking this person to the hospital. Then she has to rush back first thing in the morning, to like get to her house to pick up her kid and take her kid to school. And I love it's another one of these like fantastic long take sequences where she walks her daughter across the street to her school, but she's still wearing her outfit from the night before. She still has blood on her top, and everyone's kind of staring at her with this sort of like confused look on their face. And it's that same thing that you're talking about, which is that she is ultimately putting the life at which she wants in jeopardy, and her daughter's, like the things that are meaningful to her daughter in jeopardy by doing that. But she's not doing it in a malicious way. She's just making the choice.
Well, she's exhausted. She's run down, and she's out of options at that point.
Yeah,
this is how she does supply the money to give her daughter that life, and she just has to do it at that point.
She just has to do it. So I kind of view Ramona as kind of working in the same sense. There's certainly recklessness with the things they choose, but they both go along. Like Destiny is not just sitting by watching Ramona make decisions.
Ramona makes Destiny does call out a lot of things that Ramona does, and Ramona kind of brushes her off because she kind of sort of found a new, worse sort of like young person to put under her wing.
Dawn, who's the junkie or the drug user. Now, just a technical thing that I loved in this scene is the use of sound.
Oh yeah,
it was so great. I was like, what? And again, it's something that it's when
it's subtle and it jumps, but when you hit it, you hear it.
Yeah, and it's something that's used so well and it's so clever. It's and it's introduced in the scene previously when Destiny asked to have like the tape recorder turned off, and then the music, the film goes completely silent when the tape recorder goes off, and that's this like beautiful sort of sense of like this story only exists as it's being told.
Yeah.
And then we realize Dawn is basically working on a sting operation now to try and capture Destiny and Ramona. And so the audio that she has sounds like it's coming from a microphone. And so the film kind of suddenly has bad sound for an entire scene, but it's purposely because that's what we're trying to hear.
Yeah.
It's so clever. You've seen so many movies where there's a sting operation and someone's in the room with a microphone on. I don't think I've ever seen a movie where you hear the entire scene
through that microphone while you're watching the clear scene. Yeah, it was a cool take. I liked it a lot.
If you're ripping Scorsese, you're also, I guess I think she does this in a way that's completely her own, and you will reference it from this point. But you could also think about Coppola's film, The Conversation, which does these sort of scenes from there. I think it's so good, so clever, so well executed, so well considered. And again, the movie lands at this point. For me, the crystallization of the entire film is this sense of friendship. I want to come back to that Constance Grady article that you mentioned before, and I think the paragraph that you talked about, which is the introduction of Ramona, and Grady says this sort of beautiful line here. The scene where we watch Ramona, dance for the first time, is the thesis of the movie in a little over 2 minutes. Hustlers is about the labor of sex work and the money that comes out of it. It's about how capitalism turns bodies and sex into tools through which we can make money. It doesn't really focus on the eroticism of sex work or the idea that strippers are sexy and glamorous at all. And it's a very subtle kind of line that you're drawing here, but the way that it does that is, again, by making sure that we're always couched in the perspective that we're looking at these women from the point of view of other women. And that's what makes this movie work so well.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I guess if I had to go into sort of like my final bit about this movie, I would say that I want to go back to sort of the Goodfellas thing, basically, and something that I've always... So Goodfellas I really enjoy.
Yeah.
But Goodfellas to me, and same with Wolf of Wall Street and a couple other things, like, it's about the allure of being a terrible person and profiting from it, and then eventually the sort of like fall from grace, but realizing that like it's not a true like, oh no, now you're truly fucked. It's just now you are boring, right? Like that's kind of what because even at the end of Goodfellas, he's still like in witness protection. Spoiler for Goodfellas, and like in a suburb. Like,
I think maybe the phrase, he's bored, not boring.
Yeah, sorry. Your life is boring. The character's life is now boring.
Yeah,
and that's what could almost be seen from a outlook of these films as a punishment worse than death for these particular characters in like Goodfellas or Wolf of Wall Street. For Hustlers, what I was so glad to see was exactly what you said at the beginning of this podcast, Shahir, where the life and the story and the drugging of the Wall Street guys and how far will you go and taking advantage of those that seem to be taking advantage and like all of that stuff, that's all there and that's all good. And then there's also like the fun what's the word I'm looking for? Elaborate times when they have their big Christmas party and they're all hanging out and they're like they're getting new apartments and like they got the car and they're all of the excess that they can get due to this life of crime.
Yeah.
But then when it falls apart, you realize that even though some characters are in worse places, the where the movie focuses, we don't see J-Lo go to prison. We don't see you saw a lot of like the processing of the bad stuff in Goodfellas because I think that was sort of the point.
Yeah.
Where in this movie, all of that is just the placement for a story about how you said that women supporting each other and sort of the way that sort of friendships actually can function with human beings, women in particular in this case. But oftentimes, I mean, friendships are complicated things, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
If they're successful. So this was such a nice thing because at the end of the movie, even though the entire thing is priming you to tell you, like even subtly, like these are what's important from that first line of "get in my fur" or "come into my fur" when she takes her under her wing, like literally.
Yeah.
It's about that. And even though it's in this fantastical world with totally excess and like crime and like all this stuff, that is the backdrop for a story about women and their interactions and their friendships with one another. And that to me, for what I am looking for in this current day and age of cinema and storytelling and all that jazz, it's the perfect mix of sort of like salaciousness with actually a point that I see is clear and I believe in and I enjoy watching.
Yeah.
Again, back to Joker, it doesn't have that.
You're gonna rag on Joker for a while, right?
And again, you can go back and listen to the episode. I have a lot of positive things to say about Joker too.
Yeah.
But like, I want more discourse on this film and why it works and why it feels different and why it takes a sort of stylized thing that we are used to and uses it in a far more effective way for a story to be told, I feel like, in this day and age. And so anyway, I love this movie. I think it's very, very good. I encourage everyone to go see it. It's still in the theaters. It will be for a couple more weeks, I'm sure. Shahir, what about you? You take us home on this one.
Well, I actually have a couple of longer thoughts that I want to get into. So my final thoughts will take a little bit of time, but so buckle up. The first thing I did, and it is relation to our conversation about Joker and the conversation that we had about morality in films and whether a film can be amoral,
Sure.
like how does morality, the question of morality in films, as we discussed in Joker, is not necessarily in the question about like what characters do, whether the characters themselves are moral, but whether how the relationship between the film and the audience plays out.
Yes.
Like does the film reject the film, or does the audience reject the film because of the immorality of the characters, or does the audience feel that the film is actually preaching an idea that is amoral? And the interesting thing is that I kind of did that thing which you probably shouldn't do every time, which is go on Reddit and have a look at what people's comments on the film.
Oh, no.
And there was a fair amount of vitriol at the idea that like how can this film celebrate these like completely amoral characters, these people who have done these terrible things like drugging and victimizing people. And I guess my thing, because in the previous episode on the Joker, we kind of talked about my issue is not that a film can be amoral or have transgressive qualities or be satirical about morality or like have this sort of like unusual bent to it. Films like American Psycho or whatever, or Fight Club, but it's whether the film puts that in a context that speaks to an audience in some way. And I think the issue there is that I wasn't quite convinced. I'm not 100% convinced that Joker, as a film, kind of has puts that conversation or puts the amorality of its character in a framework for its audience to receive in a way that is that makes sense of it. And that's what stories should do.
Yep.
And this is a film where yes, these women are doing undoubtedly amoral things. They're drugging people, but the film couches it by giving us a sense of who the people they are taking advantage of, the particular place in which these women have decided that these victims are okay to be taken care of. Now, whether you agree with that or not, and there is one particular case in this film of a man whose life is torn apart by these women, is an interesting point of view to take. But the film frames it into a sort of a more complex moral conversation about the friendship that these women had with each other, and whether that's enough to sustain you through the terrible things that they did. And I think it puts a question mark in it that it's a fascinating thing to look at. And it's not questionable. I think it's very clear about what it's trying to do and say.
Well, the interesting thing, if you're sort of putting them in contrast, and again, I'm not going to do any spoilers for Joker, the reason why this film, I think, works on that level and the other one doesn't, is we see things from a lot of different perspectives that could be considered protagonist perspectives. Also, that one character that you kind of see, because before you're like, yeah, these are douchebag Wall Street guys, fuck them, just like, in some aspects of Joker are a little bit like that too.
Yeah, there's douchebag Wall Street guys in
right,
Joker.
But the way it's sort of presented, you never see the other side of like you never see you're getting back at the people that are getting you, but then also in your adventures in getting back at people, you're also leaving your own collateral damage, and characters sort of realize it in this film and realize it a little bit before. You actively see as an audience member, oh yeah, beyond this like salacious and like sort of cool like getting back at the asshole sort of thing, like there are real people, granted for their own stupid decisions, but you are taking advantage of vulnerable people just like you were once taken advantage of.
And the characters are questioning it themselves. You see Destiny, when the man that they're taking advantage of that has the autistic son, she's saying, oh, I was having conversations with him about my child, and I was really... She was conflicted about the whole thing, and that is the precipice at which she starts realizing that something is going, that they might have crossed the line.
And in Joker, the actions themselves were never questioned. Sort of how a character gets to a place is questioned, but the actions themselves never were. And in this particular, in Hustlers, due to the fact that weirdly enough, the actions, again, I have to go with, are the backdrop. It's about these women. It's about their relationship with one another. And the movie puts all the focus on that, or a lot of the focus on that.
Yeah.
And therefore, you get to see it from multiple perspectives. You get to see it from sort of a little bit of an outside view. You're not so deep in it. And I think it's highly effective and able to do what it does because of it.
One and then the final kind of sidetrack that I wanted to talk about was the sort of the Jennifer Lopez factor of this film, which I think is a major draw card to go see this film. But I think the film, rightly so, has an interesting take on how to use Jennifer Lopez for this film. And I think the thing that, like for me, obviously Out of Sight is the film that I think about a lot when I think about Jennifer Lopez. It might be because I'm a male and, that film had to do with basically a sort of even-handed play of sexuality between George Clooney's character and Jennifer Lopez's character. And every romantic comedy that Jennifer Lopez has done from that point, I felt has sort of not played in the same field where Jennifer Lopez as an actress has been able to kind of leverage the things that her stardom brings to the screen. And this again, I'm coming back to this article from Constance Grady, and I'm doing that because we almost had her on the show to talk about this. So I hope I'm filling in a few things here on her behalf. But this, I just love, again, thinking about Jennifer Lopez, and again, she's been out of the popular zeitgeist in terms of films, which is at least my point of reference for almost everything. But she's still been around. Her Instagram is huge. She's still was on American Idol or The Voice for a long period of time, whichever of those shows it was, and still a major bankable star. But we forget about this period in Jennifer Lopez's life when her body was such a cultural touch point. And I think that's what this article is about. Jennifer Lopez's body has been a major cultural shorthand for ideas about sex, race, class, and gender norms for more than 20 years now. Her body in that famous green Versace gown from the 2000 Grammy Awards red carpet directly led to the creation of Google Images. It didn't exist up until that point. And directors go out of their way to center her butt in their movies. Now, remember, the other thing that was interesting is there was I don't know if this was a rumor or something, but there was this idea that Jennifer Lopez's butt was insured for $1 million or something like that.
Oh yeah, I remember.
You remember this whole there's this entire conversation about her body in relationship to the screen or in relationship to the audience.
Yeah,
and I think the thing is this movie has such a clear understanding of star power and how to utilize it in a smart way. Much in the same way like Fincher uses Brad Pitt in Fight Club. I think Scarfia uses Jennifer Lopez in the exact right way. And that first scene is this moment of jaw-dropping awe. I think if the camera was angled slightly differently, if we got 2 or 3 more point of view shots from from male spectators, that whole scene kind of falls apart and becomes exactly the thing that we don't want it to. But because it's framed so well, because she knows what she's doing as a director and a writer, it never veers into that. And it's so good for that reason. I urge everyone to go see this film. I had such a great time with it. I will probably go see it a second time.
There you go. This has been the only podcast about the film Hustlers. Shahir,
I'm a hustler, baby.
Shahir,
what is that song?
When you are not hustling yourself through all of your pole dancing classes and mastering the table, where can folks find you?
I thought that was going to go in another direction for a second there. You can see me slipping off the pole at my website, www.shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD.
I wish your website was named Slipping Off the Pole.
Slipping off the pole. I'm sure someone's got that, right?
I'm sure.
Dub. Matt, where when you're not sitting here greasy and G-stringed up discussing third wave feminism with another dude, where can people find you?
You can find this hootie tootie disco cutie over at my website at matthewkrol.com for my life and works. Also Skeletor, the number 4 PREZ on Instagram and PSN or Emperor MSK on Twitter. Also check out the good works we are doing over at Extra Credits. I believe this week we have released our first, we're starting on a series on Angkor Wat, which is super good. And the art in that is phenomenal. So go check that out. And yeah, that's about it for this week. Stay tuned again, not right now, of course. But later in this week, I bet you we're going to be dropping that Joker email thing. Because you guys, everybody out there, You folks, you have some Joker opinions.
Yeah, the opinions are coming in fast now, so please email. Keep them coming as well. We'll review. We'll do a special episode on Joker emails, but you can continue to email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod, or like Zuck did, review us on iTunes.
Stop.
And have me check your grammar and spelling in the most horrible way.
Yuck. All right, well, we'll talk to you next week, and until then, I hope you have a lovely time doing whatever you're doing right now.
In the most hustle-florific way.
Make your hustle.
This is America, baby.
Yeah. Hustle.
America's a business, not
make
a
sure
country.
there's an equal amount of hustling and flowing, though. You have to make sure.
Right, yeah.
It's dangerous.
It's dangerous out here. It's hard out here for a pimp.
Okay, now we gotta go.